Chapter 136 Boston, October 12, 1862. I lean back into my chair and sigh with relief. Paperwork. The bane of civilization. Although I have delegated most of the tasks related to the day-to-day handling of my manufacturing empire to competent subordinates, and while Lulzkin, the werewolves, and pretty much everyone else manage themselves, there are still decisions to be made. Conflicts to be settled. I simply cannot distance myself too much. Normally, it would be dangerous to leave my humans unattended for too long. Some would forget the price of duplicity. The wars, both overt and secret, have kept them on the straight and narrow, for now. I expect that it will last for a bit longer, just as I expect some culling after all of this is done. And so, I keep in touch with my various managers via spell, telegraph, or surprise visits in the dead of night when they think they are safe. It depends on what is best for the cause. And also a little bit on my mood. There is but one telegram left, labeled for your amusement and Sophie's elegant style. Constantine's assistant has been taking on more and more duties as time goes on. I open it and learn that the Confederate slave owners with more than 20 slaves exempted themselves from conscription, by vote. Just yesterday. Why not just allow them to pay someone to go in their stead? I ask myself. Someone knocks on the door. Without waiting for a reply, Melusan barges in with great haste. She throws me a condescending glance. Talking to yourself and your old age. And a good late evening to you too, my faithful minion. Now who are you running from? I ask, picking up agitation in her aura. Martha, the redhead soberly replies. She smooths the sides of her skirt in a very human gesture of nervosity. Her eyes take the vacant stare we sometimes have when focusing on other senses. Martha? Lady Martha of the Lancaster, the head of Mask in Mexico? I ask. SHHHHH. Not so loud. And why are you afraid of her? She is a political leader, not the boogeyman. But then I hear it. Soft feet paddling over lush carpets outside in the corridor. One person. They stop by my door, just as I stand in front of it. I take a step back. This is the room, mistress. Should I announce your presence? One of the maids says. I recognize her voice, she is a recent hire. There is no need, Dari. You have been a great help. Off you go then. And take good care of yourself, a more mature and confident voice replies. Thank you, mistress. Bye. The footsteps pad away until silence returns. Only then do 3 heavy knocks sound on my door. Melusan, I know that you are in here. I can smell your rustic floral perfume in the air, you little twerp. Open the damn door. I have nothing to say to you, you old bat. My companion roars, head buried into one of my pillows. I did not see her move. Perfect, because I meant for you to listen. You can open now, or I can inform your dear speaker that I want you to be my assistant for his pet project. Then we will see a lot of each other over the next few weeks, mark my words. URRRRRG. Young lady, do not make me raise my voice. I'm 117. Then act like it. I wait a while as Melusan huffs and grumbles into my pillow, which will now be tainted with Lancaster saliva. Finally, she bumps back and stands back up. She takes a moment to make sure that her green dress is well adjusted and nods at me. Which means that I have been demoted to doorwoman. Fine. I lower the handle and Martha rushes in, trying to push me aside. My territory. Mine. HSSSSSS. A step back. Raise hands. Silence. Now that we have determined that you are a big bad predator, can't I finally have a conversation with my descendant before the sun rises? Do not be too cocky, I warn, remember what you are. A guest. My, how proud the younger generation is. I would remember our respective positions, if I were you. We are no longer within naval artillery strike range. We very much are. Behave, I warn. Then I let her in. Martha rolls her eyes dramatically. She can roll however she wants as long as she does not overreach. Melusan is up by the time the haughty lady makes her way to the tea table. Both Lancasters are short, beautiful, and quite shapely. They even share the same heart-shaped hairline, though Martha's locks are black. It occurs to me that when Martha speaks of descendants, she is being literal. "How did you even know I was here?" my friend asks. "I simply made a few inquiries. Your nightmare was stabled with the others." Splendid beast, I might say. Melusen gives me a very small, very arrogant look and I bare my teeth. Those two idiots are wrong. Metis is the best pony. Theirs could never charge into a battle line as the Watcher intended, so they are necessarily inferior. Then it was only a matter of checking every location with the helpful assistance of the staff. The Lancaster lady finishes with a predatory smile. It does not matter that the local humans were loyal to us and not her. They are accustomed to serving vampires. It was child's play for Martha to turn it into her advantage. I must admit that this is the last location I checked. I never expected you to keep such exotic company, she adds, casting a glance my way. Rude, I note. Whatever do you mean? I just find it curious that my blood would agree to play a second fiddle to another while they have the potential to lead their own territory. We joined forces, I retort with a fake smile, against pushy seniors who would see us brought to heel. If only my own clan had not deserted against me and left me to die, Melusen adds, who knows what I could have achieved. From our tones, a passing mortal could think that we were discussing the weather. A passing vampire would direct us to the nearest dueling grounds. We are not being subtle. If we were back in England, I could have you flayed for your tone. Then perhaps you should return there, Melusen growls, all pretense at diplomacy now abandoned. I shall even provide your ship ticket if you are as short on money as you are on manners, I add helpfully. Monstrous pressure erupts from the old twit as anger gets the better of her. She is not wearing a gauntlet, but someone of her power can cast without one. Our oars flare. Far below, something answers. Something powerful. Martha closes her eyes and liams back into her seat. Her brows rise a bit in an expression of surprise. A second later, she returns to her normal, composed self, as if nothing had happened. I do not know whether to condemn you for your foolishness, or praise you for showing some spine. Of course, in other circumstances, I would slap you with said spine. She considers the question for a moment. Or at least a few vertebrae. But these are strange times and I am in a strange land, and I have not come this far without a few compromises. Am I to understand that you do not recognize me, your ancestor, your elder in the blood, as someone worthy of obedience? Hell no, Melusen states without hesitation, hell no. I was turned by an arrogant maidwoman. I was caged like a beast when she lost her bid for power. I was sent here, under the yoke of that bitch Moore, to do menial tasks and provide favors. The only person I owe my soul to died defending me from the order of Gabriel. He saved me from myself. He crawled through his own blood to hide my defenseless form. Even that blonde battering ram, hey, showed me more respect than any of my kin. As for playing second fiddle as you say, I am a city master and part of a well-defined alliance, not some glorified eye candy to be paraded at social events. I have my own trade empire for fuck's sake. Second fiddle indeed. I see, Martha notes, I always thought that Moore was a good element perturbator, but a poor administrator. Too focused on intrigue, I always said. Oh, that is grand. I watch the two go at it. It feels curious seeing people who so closely resemble each other being so at odds. As if I were watching two sisters argue over men, or something. I have not come to uproot you, young one, Martha finally allows. I have the impression that she is not used to having to negotiate with her inferiors. Which we still are. Then what is it that you want? Melusen answers guardedly. I have come looking for an apprentice. Both of us stare at that, though the two Lancasters' attentions are now focused on each other. You must understand. Those of us who were born mages do not consider magic the same way as masters who gained access to blood spells. It can be a blessing, but only with adapted training. I want to train a pupil, so I am no longer the only vampire at the apex of traditional casting. And before you ask, Constantine does not count. His approach is different, and bound to his nature as a progenitor. You, however, I am not the best caster out there. Not yet. But you managed to make significant progress despite little access to proper resources. And there is one more thing that sets you apart from others. Melusine does not look surprised. Both Lancasters raise their right hands at the same time, palms up. Twin flames flare up. We understand each other. I do not require obedience. I require commitment and respect. 3 months per year living together in Mexico City, once the current crisis is over. You can even use that wild card of yours, the one who travels through the nightmare lands, to shorten distances. What do you demand in return? Greatness. As I said, it is lonely at the top. Then I agree. For now, I have matters to attend to. I shall take my leave. Melusine finally remembers my existence and gives me a nod before departing. I go to grab a bag of fresh coffee and turn to see Martha gauging me. An apt ally for her. And you do deserve your reputation. Ah. Finally. It only took escaping Bertrand 3 times and cutting my way through 2 masked squades back in Paris to finally be recognized. Or perhaps she is referring to my commercial success. I straighten a bit under the praise. You really do have vampiredom's best rear. Excuse me. Fredericksburg, November 25, 1862, from the perspective of George Colville of the White Cabal. It was dark and cold. Winter was in full swing. The weather was overcast and the clouds low, their presence weighing on the man's shoulders though he could not see them in the black skies above. The frigid wind carried in the air the rank smell of the river, and behind it that of spent powder. And behind that, in turn, that of blood and spoiled flesh. George was a soldier of the White Cabal. It was his second mission. His best friend had died during the first. George's little sister had shown some strange ability when she was young. She could close wounds. When George was 13, he escaped the very religious village they lived in with her and traveled the land in search for a place to settle. It had been George's most difficult time of his life, even considering the recent events. At least dying in battle was fast. It was not the long agony of starvation. But some people had found them and made them move to a city called Avalon. They had found a home, and now it was time to defend it. George was rather small and stocky, with a slightly too large face that made him look more like a fat teen aping a soldier than a real one, but he could shoot with the best of them. He was also cool under pressure. I will need people with nerves of steel, my lad, Archmage Cedric Birmingham had told him, as brave as they come to do what must be done. So George had said yes. And he would do it again. Their small column made their way through the muddy path at the back of the Union lines. The army, under a general with epic facial hair called Burnside, had managed to cross the Rappahannock near the city before it could be fortified. Now, the combat had degenerated into a siege as the more experienced Lee had drawn him into a protracted battle. Things were taking a turn for the worse for the besiegers as the defenders were now dug in, but it would not matter to them tonight. What mattered was the dead. There were plenty of those across the fields and outskirts of the city, fat grapes of them rotting in ditches and fallow fields. Gray and blue. And red. And the white of the exsanguinated. Yes, it was rather chilly tonight. George ran his hand along the barrel of his repeater and took solace in the familiar gesture. Their group consisted of 20 mundane infantrymen in borrowed Union uniforms, 2 strong lads in chainmail under their heavy cloaks, and Archmage Cedric, quite fetching with his majestic dark beard and his confident step. God, George hoped tonight would go better than last time. They had pretty much been overrun by the drones. He would never forget the look on his Jeb's face as he was disemboweled, and the dying plea to make sure his body would be burnt immediately. Think we'll see her? His neighbor whispered excitedly. We'll definitely see her. She's heading the expedition, he muttered back, focusing on his surroundings. I've never seen a vampire before. Yeah, well, remember that they can hear everything. So don't say nothing you wouldn't want her to hear. Is it true that they drink blood? George turned to the man. His name was Peter, and he was a dumbass. Maybe you should ask her in person. See where that gets you. He left Peter to ponder the question. Everyone said that she stuck to her agreements. At least, There was that. They followed a curve in the road snaking its way between bramble thickets and the odd field. A large rock hid the city from sight, and they could now see a lantern lighting the side of a decrepit barn. The mangy door was open, and a few men were standing in animated discussion by the side. "This is all quite irregular," a wiry man in a clean lieutenant uniform protested. "You saw the written order," another calmly replied. That one was a tall man with brown hair graying at the temples, and a waxed mustache under a peculiar hat. He had an accent that George could not quite place. "Well, I will be verifying their legitimacy, mark my words." "You do that." The officer huffed and turned around. The hatted man then nodded at the archmage and banged on the side of the barn. "George, Eli, come with me please. The rest, keep a lookout." George and another infantryman detached themselves from the column as it split. They moved into the building, which proved to be just as cold as outside, and found a soldier sitting in front of a curious crate containing equipment that he did not recognize. A woman was next to him. He could see an elegant dark travel dress and blonde hair held in a conservative tail. She was facing away from him. He made a conscious effort to avert his eyes and keep a lookout for anything unusual. The far end of the barn contained one large crate sitting on some sort of trailer. There was also a table by George's side, upon which he saw a few papers lit by yet another lantern. One of them had confidential orders printed on it. It was half open. Inside, words flowed in an elegant, refined calligraphy. It read like this: "Stop annoying me, I can do whatever I want." And below, "You twits." The vampire leaned a bit more and poked the construct with a taloned finger. It was easier to notice what was different if you expected it. What he could see of her face was quite pale and possessed the glacial beauty and alabaster mobility of a statue, like those he had admired in the Avalon Council Hall. Her nails were quite sharp and dark as the night. A human woman would have turned around to see who was coming. This one had no need. The operator of whatever machine that was looked up at her and blinked. "Do you need to see the order again?" she asked softly. The man frowned and shook his head, before returning to his task, eyes vacant. He was, George realized from the rhythmic clicking, telegraphing something. George did his best to stay alert, and saw Eli by his side do the same. The two of them were the smartest of the bunch. Not like that moron Peter who would have spent his time ogling. He thought that vampires did not like it, but who knew? There were so few of the buggers. And that was for the best. Sorcery was one thing. It could not come from the devil because his sister had it and used it to heal people. Those aristocrats of the night were another thing altogether. They said that a single one of them could slaughter a whole company. They said that cities under their grasp could not be visited at night without their leave. They said that striking deals with them could propel someone to the top of their world, but that they extracted a heavy price. They said many things, but it had remained a faraway thing to George, who had never been present on the rare occasions when that one visited. Now, he could see her with his own eyes, so close. The Red Maiden. His heart beat powerfully under his ribs and sweat purled under his kepi despite the chilly air. "How are things?" Cedric asked, debonair. "When Corporal Miller here is done sending my message, we will proceed. The cage is at the back. You will need 2 people to drag it," she answered without moving. Her voice was smooth and cultured with a rather neutral accent. It was the sort of voice you would expect to hear in a salon, speaking little nothings in the ears of blushing suitors. "A cage?" said Corporal asked from his prone position. "Do your job," the vampire retorted. George and Eli left the chastised soldier to his task. They pulled the trailer out with no difficulty. A moment later, the vampire strode out with Birmingham by their side. They continued down the path now with a crate and up to a massive carriage sitting by the side of the road. The vampire climbed in without a word. What came out was how the evil queen in Cinderella would look like if she led evil armies as a side gig. Usually, the white cabal tried to keep a low profile even when they were on a mission. What the vampire woman wore did not follow the same logic. It made a statement. The outfit was dark-scaled armor with a heavy breastplate and covered in weapons. The armor itself had seen much use, obvious from the parts of it where repairs had discolored it. It was happening again. George had felt it when the Scourge Hive drones, as they were called, had attacked. It was a peculiar feel of falling backward as if swallowed by the earth while still standing. George had raised his repeater rifle and shot bullet after bullet into the creature's wire-thin frame, a primal part of him taking over from the depths of his psyche. All the while, his conscious mind had remained paralyzed by the horror and realization that things walked the earth that God had not placed there. He was looking at one now, he realized. The only difference was that this one struck deals in honored oaths. She also looked exactly like a person, if you didn't know. He did not know if it wasn't worse. The vampire casually stepped down and clapped her hands together. Once, a woman in a thick traveling cloak popped out from behind a ridge, smirking at Archmage Cedric, who just rolled his eyes. The newcomer was short, but when she jumped down, he could see that she was quite muscular. The shorter woman's posture had a strange quality to it. Almost feral. She went to the side of the man with the strange hat. They moved out once more towards the city, George still pulling the cage with Eli. They left the road behind and crossed through water-soaked fields towards the city proper. They came across a picket line of Union sentries, but the vampire did her thing and soldiers were sent back with various expressions ranging from curiosity to annoyance. None protested their passage. When they came in view of buildings and ditches, things changed. "All right. Blind the lanterns, lads. We don't want to be catching bullets." He wondered how they would see until he heard it. "New Surian." The vampire's voice was both soft and incredibly deep. The words possessed a weight that anchored their existence deep in George's mind, present and yet somehow incomprehensible. They fell over his shoulders like a heavy mantle. Darkness was pushed back. No, it would be more accurate to say that light was stolen. The column was now caught into a bubble of purple light shining selfishly from the vampire's palm. A few feet to George's left. The timid sphere of visibility cut abruptly, and beyond it there was nothing. The muscular woman let out a throaty laugh. "Up to me then?" she asked in a raspy voice. "If you please," the vampire answered politely. The muscular woman snarled and George finally realized what she was. One more monster to add to the pile. Despite her aggression, she sniffed the air and shook her head. "We are probably too close to the troops. We will follow along the lines of fortifications and stop every 300 paces." "Follow." They did. George huffed and drew the crate behind himself with the occasional help of other soldiers when the terrain grew too unforgiving. There was a peculiar charm to walk in the wake of creatures of legends on a hunt for something truly evil, a sort of spice that made the world more interesting. In his feverish mind, the attraction of being witness to such an event warred against his instinctual fear of the unknown. It was winning too. Truth had an addictive quality to it. Once tasted, it could not be abandoned. Not for him. Peter by his side was showing another reaction. He was softly praying and denying the world. Bloodshot eyes dug into the back of the fighter in front of him. Perhaps, for some, it was too much. They stopped again. And again. In the shallow, purplish bubble, time lost its meaning and distances extended no further than a few steps forward. It was on the fifth, or perhaps it was the sixth stop, that a change finally occurred. "I smell them. To the west. Close," the werewolf woman said. "Good. You may return, June," the vampire said. "I can fight." "I know, but..." The vampire's voice trailed off and she turned to the rest of the column, her gaze passing over the men. George saw no trace of contempt here. In fact, the complete detachment made the experience that much more surreal. "Pray," the werewolf snarled, "perhaps I should return. I will see you later." The werewolf raced out and disappeared out of the bubble. The vampire looked ahead and slightly to the side. She addressed Archmage Cedric. "I see where they must be. We can bypass the pack's front line by walking along the wall. I will drop our concealment when we are on top of our target and leave the capture to you. Would that be agreeable?" "Indeed. Let me talk with my men first." The vampire nodded. "All right everyone, gather around. That's it. Now, I can finally share the details of the operation with you. You may be wondering why the secrecy. Let's just say that even Allied forces might want a piece of what we get tonight. Indeed, we are here to capture a node drone. Silence. A node drone is one that strongly feels the presence of whatever horrid entity animates them. Under its nefarious influence, the other drones move with more haste and coordination. For that reason it always stays at the back, and for that same reason, it will flee if the battle is lost, to bring knowledge of its foes to the next pack. We are going to capture one. But will the others not? Object? One of the older fighters remarked. Yes, of course, that is why we have Lady Ariane with us. Now, here is how we will proceed. I will restrain the creature's movement, then Kunt and Phillips bind it with chains, he said, looking at the two strong people dressed in chainmail. The rest of you must cover us. 4 groups, 5 riflemen per group, 1 volley per drone. Stay close to each other and make every shot count. If you are overrun, aim for the head and remember that I won't be able to assist until after the node drone is secured. The capture takes priority. Do you understand? Yes. Then go, and may God be with all of us. Ariane, we are ready. Take each other's hands or grab the trailer, the vampire said. Do not let go. No Sharon. Darkness spread over the group. The absence of light was so total, so absolutely final that George found himself blinking and searching for a hint of shape, anything to prove that he was not suddenly blind. Even the sounds were muffled. The only reliable sense he had left was touch, and he grabbed the trailer like a drowning man to a buoy. And then they started moving. The march through shadow lasted a small eternity. George held to the trailer's handle under his fingers until he could recognize every nook, every shard, every curve of it. His own labored breath was incredibly loud in his ears. He clung to the sound with all his might because it was proof that he was still alive. They slowed down to a near halt. Every step was a matter of seconds. They stopped. The veil fell. The world reappeared under his eyes as the lantern bearers simultaneously lit their own. Trees, lights, blessed lights of humanity far into the distance. More worryingly, a horrible head with flattened nose, and a large mouth filled with serrated teeth right in front of him. Eyes of pure ink focused on him as the creature prepared to scream. George grabbed his repeater. There was a flash and the head silently fell from its shoulder. In a maneuver ingrained into him through countless hours of drilling, George fell back to back with his squad. The White Cabal detachment was surrounded on one side by searching drones who grabbed corpses to a pile where a few of them defiled them. They were in a small clearing. Left one. His corporal bellowed. George let his gun slide, pressing the trigger as the barrel passed over his target. Guns roared all around. The drone his NCO had picked reared back with half its head missing and 3 holes in its chest. Something alerted George. He looked quickly to the side. Eli was missing. Had he let go? Next target. Center. The world came sharply into focus. On the right, Cedric had trapped a strange horned drone inside his shields and the 2 chainmailed men were using chains to bind it. As to why the vampire was not doing it herself, the answer was clear. While the soldiers eliminated stragglers coming to them, the brunt of the fighting happened through the forest by his side. George could only catch glimpses of it, but whatever he saw filled him with awe and terror. The drones were after the vampire. Almost all of them. They pursued her in a thick, organic group that moved with eerie coordination, trying to corner and kill her. It was not working very well. The vampire was always one step ahead. She always pierced through gaps before they could close, and behind, she left mangled corpses. Next target. Left. George shot again and a drone collapsed forward, claws raking the ground. The monstrous battle beyond was paradoxically much more silent than their own powder-heavy struggle. "Hey," Peter said, "I think we riled the city up." He turned away from the battle and pointed at lights flaring in the distance. The fallen drone let out a piercing shriek and jumped once. Its left limb tore through the idiot's torso. George didn't have a shot. Peter's gurgling body was in the way. He dove backward and avoided a furious slash. The drone fell immediately afterward. It was already dead. Shit. More drones smelled the blood in the water. They were coming from God knew where, always more of them. The veil beyond the nearest line of 3 was a massive pallid flash, sometimes sliced by a black bolt. George aimed and shot at a charging beast. The first blow took half of its jaw out. The second caught it under the left eye. The next drone used the first one's corpse as a shield. There was pain. An agony so immediate and so shocking that it stole his mind. George fell backward with a gasp. There was no air. He was drowning. He coughed something. An horrible face leaned before him, jaw wide. It blew up. George saw what happened next from a strange angle. He was on the ground. The man with a strange hat was blasting away with an engraved revolver, helping men to their feet. George had one hand free. The other was trapped under the heavy corpse. He tried to pick up his discarded rifle with fingers made sticky by blood. A distant part of George knew that he was dead, but it was muffled under his need to kill the things. They were wrong. "We got it, go go go," Cedric yelled in the distance. The vampire landed by his side a moment later. For the first and last time, their eyes met. Time slowed down. She gave him the tiniest nod. Her armored hand grabbed something from her back and passed it to him. He took it and looked. It was a squarish object, one that it did not take a genius to recognize. The others left. Drones scrambled around him. One stopped and sniffed the air. It saw him. George smiled. He showed the creature his middle finger, brought the object to his mouth, and pulled the pin with his teeth. Chapter 137. Newspapers cover my desk. I skim through them and verify that my directives have been followed. I believe that, in order to control public opinion, one has to select a specific topic and give up on the rest. Reporters and columnists argue in favor and against the continuation of the war, in favor and against the status of black citizens and freemen, in favor and against conscription. They hurl insults and trigger hot debates on a plethora of subjects, their tones fiery and passionate. The fracas of discordant opinions provides a nice, smooth layer to the one message I wish to be conveyed. White cabal good. That is all. Local heroes fend off monstrous assault. Spiritualists successfully capture live specimen in daring attack. Minister Lewis to address the Senate. Like a chaste woman bearing herself on her wedding night, the magical world only reluctantly sheds its shadowy garments. We drown every new revelation in the chaos of war news and scandalized opinions on the price of tobacco, and all of those are further sweetened by the handsome face of Reggie himself. His dazzling smile adorns many pictures, including a few where he stands triumphant over the mangled remains of a drone like a hunter over an elk. He has already become a darling of the media. And despite the honeymoon, the first waves of persecution lap at our feet. Witch trials and public execution are in vogue again both south and north of the border. Even as far as my Illinois, 20 hot-blooded young men rode into the village of Moonside for the express purpose of investigating reports of unholy activities. I had to order the murder of 2 magistrates and 3 notables before the families of the bereaved got the message that their dead would not be avenged. I even had a small riot on my hands back in Marquette. And this is just the beginning. For now, most people see mages as normal people who have researched the occult and understood it. This has already caused so much hatred, fear, and friction, that I think the country would have simply blown up in an orgy of violence if it were not already in the middle of one. I dare not think what will happen when the humans find out about the more problematic members of our community, especially us and our vulnerability to sunlight. We will have to forfeit all of our public identities on that day. Ah well, it matters little for now. I have my plate full with a much more meaningful question. What do you do when your foe amounts to cunning packs of predatory monsters? Well, so far, we have adopted and adapted the strategies used by our predecessors back in the 14th century. Fortify what you can to deny resources, and form roaming squads of hunters to track down and exterminate the foe. By this method, we can theoretically both reduce the Scourge Hive's ability to replenish its numbers while also actively reducing it. There are, of course, a few problems. Today's United States is not 14th century Poland. First, there are no castles for the small folk to gather in. Second, the population density is higher, which means more resources for the enemy. Third, people have lost their healthy respect for the dwellers of the night. We are to blame for that last part, really, as an enlightenment, but it remains that when you warn people about incoming demons, 14th century Polish peasants were more receptive than your average modern skeptic. And fourth, the entirety of Vampiricum is not currently mobilized to face the foe. The White Cabal, Knights, and other allies we have gathered do not equal 500 irate apex predators who believe the apocalypse has come, and intend to face it with a sword in hand. In short, we are losing. Every sortie, every skirmish comes with casualties that we cannot replace while the enemy grows by the day, feasting on remote villages. I could pretend that we are only improving our readiness and giving the mortals time to act, but that would be a lie. By the time that the hive has reached the tipping point, even the Army of the Potomac will not be able to face them. Drones do not have morale. They are not deterred by relatively inaccurate mass volley fire. Finally, it only takes a few minutes for the dead to join them, so a lost engagement means that they will actually increase their numbers while ours dwindle. We need a solution, and Constantine believes that he has found one. Boston, a court fortress, February 22, 1863. Will this thing even work? I ask as I inspect the unwieldy, ugly piece of cylindrical metal. It looks like someone touched in the head placed a massive bomb in an ironclad ship, then fused together debris with molten metal and engraved every square inch of it with insane gibberish. The speaker and my occasional mentor sighs dramatically. He takes a few steps away and straightens his gangly form until he stands far above me. You are quite critical for someone without the ability to comprehend the complexity of what we are building here. I would like to remind you that we are contending with the shadow of a dead god for control over its fleshy bits. Of course, the result of such pursuits would be a strange and unusual artifact. Constantine, close your eyes and then inspect your work with a neutral view. What does it look like? The progenitor indulges me, which means that he must be more exhausted than I thought. He passes a hand over his thin black hair. Now that you mention it, it does look like a 6-hole parsnip train wreck for parts and cobbled them together to use as a sword-fighting training puppet. Indeed. Can we even move it? Of course we can move it, he scoffs. Until it is deployed, that is. Then it will need a dozen powerful mages at all times to keep the enchantment active. Brilliant. I could technically replace it by continuous blood sacrifices, but since it represents about 100 people per day, I thought it might be impractical. Yes. The locals frown upon such methods, or so I was told, I reply acidly. Yes, Constantine remarks, troublesome that. It removes so many options. Ah well. So hypothetically, what does the thing do? Ah yes, thank you for reminding me. The construct will emulate essence fluctuation along the Carnelian line on a 2.6 frequency, but with a constant intensity over a radius of 700 miles when at full power. The fluctuation will overtake the natural background frequency of the planet and cover that of the dead god, which we have named the Outsider for convenience's sake, until the node creatures lose control over their swarm. Indeed, the node creature themselves should fall to the powerful nature of the call and answer the most primal urge of their kind, which is to gather in large enough numbers for the shadow essence of the outsider to take the foothold necessary to direct them, and? You have no idea what I am talking about, do you? I raise a haughty brow. Does he think that I have spent my years of study in idleness? The arrogance. This is a beacon that will override the will of the outsider and call all hive-scourge drones within the surrounding states to its location. In layman terms, yes. And then we kill them. Yes. Hopefully. There is still the matter of killing. We need an army, I state. Yes. Unfortunately, the human ones. Well. They will not do. Oh no, they will not do at all. Not unless they are fully prepared. So it is up to us. Indeed. I have already recruited all available Rosenthal mercenaries as well as all our standing forces. It will provide a corps of professional monster killers for this initiative. As for the rest, I have not decided yet. I sigh. and turn to leave. "Where are you going?" Constantine asks. "Well, we need an army. I will get us a bloody army. To cash in my chips. All of them. Asterisk asterisk asterisk." Later that night. "It could work. It should work," Jimena says, voice distorted by the mirror. "Can I count on the knight's assistance in this matter? Are you kidding? I would have beaten you black and blue if you had not told me." "What my dear subordinate means to say," Sergei of the Kalinin, night squad leader, points out from behind her, "is that we will be there as soon as possible. Please give us a location." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Boston Harbor, even later that night. "The ship will sail, madam. Will you be joining us? I thank you for your consideration, but I need to gather a few friends before I head south. You will find your destination in the enclosed map. It is an abandoned village behind the Confederate lines. According to our calculations, the locale is both within the optimal range of the construct and heavily defensible. What should we expect? There will be derelict houses with a pier, then a road heading west. South of the pier is a large promontory with a ruined fort at the top. The promontory is the most defensible position, with only a narrow strip of land allowing passage up. It is also large enough for our purpose. You will arrive first, so clear anything that lives here, and start making the fort habitable. The different groups will join you progressively over the following month. You have already been there? Yes. The name of the village is Black Harbor, and it is there that the man this ship was named after died. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Moonside, March the 8th, 1863. Something heavy hangs in the air. I can feel it in the wind. The fields, normally always filled with quarreling young betas fighting for supremacy, lie empty. The only illumination comes from the village's main hall. Even a beginner mage would feel the concentrated, potent auras radiating from it. I dismount metas at the edge of a wide crowd of werewolves holding torches. A veritable wall of shape-shifting monsters in human form stands facing me from wall to wall, yet when I stride in confidently, they part to let me through. The taste of the moon and the ferocious hunt hangs heavy in the air. I walk through the path they formed into the main square and the dais they raised there. Jeffrey stands proudly with a few of his lieutenants. He towers over them both physically and magically, the largest beast in the collection of packs. His open shirt shows corded muscles. I stop at a respectful distance. I will not bow, but I will show the respect he deserves. This is his land. We are allies. Welcome, Ariane of the Nirari. We have all felt the change in the earth. What tidings do you bring? I had no idea that Jeffrey could be concise. I will play the game, and give this moment the gravity it deserves. The time to face the hive has come. I call upon our old alliance, an agreement to fight side by side in times of danger. We have set a trap for them. Come with me, and we will lure the foes with the shadow of their own. We will gather them all in one point. We will kill them to the last. Now, I ask you, are you with me? Jeffrey smiles, not his usual smirk but the satisfied grin of the man who just got his wish. He walks to my side and passes me. His steps carry him to the edge of the platform and hundreds of werewolves amassed at his feet. Wolves of the north, my brothers and sisters, how far we have traveled. 30 years ago, we were slaves in lost forests of this world. We freed ourselves with tooth and claw. We came here to heal and to grow, and we did. We licked our wounds. We built our hearths. We left our marks on the forests and the fields. We made this place our home. But now, decades later, all of it is at risk. You know of what we face. I will not let overgrown locusts take my territory, because after all those efforts, we are strong, and we are ready. I call upon all the families. I call upon all the packs. I call for a war host. And let the great hunt begin. Jeffrey howls. The answering cry from the crowd shakes the very air as the light of the crescent moon reflects in 400 glinting eyes. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Marquette, Eagle Foundry, March 9, 1863. The Sternberger opens the warehouse gates, sliding the titanic slab of nailed wood on oiled railings as if it were a kitchen door. The suffused gaslight falls on 20 forms covered in tarps. "Here they are," he says with a Swedish accent. Loth is pretty much in the minority when it comes to brag. A dozen 24-pounders, 7 standard mortars, and 1 Skirag Arcane artillery piece. Good. Pack it up and give me a list of what we have in terms of powder and projectiles. I will need our Stuart small arms as well. I expected an assent, but the old bearded fellow stands proudly before me. He is rather short for his kind, but he makes it up with absurdly large shoulders. Helping you in battle was never part of our agreement. I hold his gaze and his stubborn defiance stops. "I never asked for it," I remark pointedly. "You do not have to remind me of my oaths, mortal." "Lady, no need to act like that. I am older than you. Then you should know better. I merely ask that you prepare the guns for transport." The older man's eyes shift inward. "Which ones?" "Every last one of them." He holds my gaze again, and this time he does not relent. "Even the Skirag piece?" "Yes, Elgear, even my Skirag piece. Which I claimed as a spoil of battle. And you will have humans handle it." "Indeed I will." We keep quiet for a moment. I am about to be offered a boon, and so I wait lest the grumpy old baggage decides to withdraw it out of pride. Can't have those bumbling idiots manipulate such a fine exemplar of burger engineering. "We'll come with you. But don't think you can order me around or anything." I allow myself the smallest smile. "It is my privilege to have you by our side," I allow. "Can you manage the logistical aspect of things?" "Woman, stop your provocations." Marquette, Red Cabal headquarters, later that night. So the time has come. The young leader asks me, "Fiery or deployed?" Merritt's son has truly come into his own. "Yes, Oliver. I know that the Red Cabal is young and that you are still finding your marks, but I would appreciate it if you—" "No need to ask me twice, Ariane. I know that you already called the wolves. This alliance, this coordination between all races, is what we have been created for." "Where, and when?" "I knew I could count on you." "Yes, now where and when?" "I need to pull everyone back." Avalon, White Cabal Stronghold, New York State, March 14, 1863. The council room falls silent as I finish my proposal. Who else is going to that battle? Who would stand by our side? Everyone I can find to hold the line until dark, then every battle-ready vampire on the continent. The calm declaration is received with stupefied expressions. Even the ever-irritating Cornelius has fallen silent. But not for long. "What guarantee can you give us that you will not leave us to die and only come to mop up?" he asks, but without malice. Even someone as stubborn as him knows what we are up against. I understand that he has also fought on the front line with great courage. Our mortals will be there. I do not have to tell you how strong a commitment this represents. The acid comeback dies on his lips. He takes a deep, calming breath. "So, you finally found a battle that could kill me?" Frost asks with annoyance from his seat. The rest of the council shows various signs of impatience at the outburst. "Well, old man, if a horde of world-ending cannibalistic creatures from some horror tale cannot end you, I do not know what to say," I reply genially. The levity of the comment gets me the reaction I was looking for. The council relaxes. I hear a few chuckles. "Well, it could work, I guess. Where will it be?" "A place called Black Harbor. I will arrange transportation by ship from New York. My contact will be in touch." "How much time do we have?" Counselor Hopkins asks. The black dog sneers lightly and I see eagerness in his wrinkled face. "The old trap master gave me some trouble back in the day with nothing but a shovel, wires, and quite a bit of powder. He will have considerably more resources at his disposal this time. We have a month or two before our position becomes untenable." "Excellent. I will be sure to prepare a warm welcome. I already have a few ideas. City Point, Virginia, Army of the Potomac Headquarters, March 17, 1863. General Grant takes a puff of cigar and lets the bluish smoke expand through the dark room's air. Even with the fading winter delaying the coming of longer days, our visit remains unusual in its lateness. I have taken the time to make sure that Sheridan was wearing a borrowed uniform so that it would look to an outsider like a courtesy visit by a subordinate. Even then, his guard's suspicion has not abated. "I cannot acquiesce to your request," he finally says, but he raises a finger before we can object. "I understand the urgency of the situation, believe me. Unfortunately, my position as Lieutenant General is not secured. The President went over a lot of heads to promote me despite my junior rank. I understand that Burnside's encouraged it, but General Hooker is livid and General Meade is not much better. I am not a man who enjoys court games while the soldiers bleed and die, but I also understand the necessities of politics. Many eyes are on my back right now, eager to see me fall. However," he continues, then trails off. "However?" I ask. By my side, Neminata gives the man an encouraging smile. She looks gorgeous in a more conservative outfit than that which she usually wears, though the mischief on her gaze can never be truly dulled. She has chosen another human in officer garb to accompany her. She was the only one available to accompany me in this important task. I was slightly worried that she would let her playfulness get the better of her, but I was underestimating her. The same woman who hunts Murghol Mana-hounds with a smile is perfectly capable of acting demure as well. It just feels a bit weird to me. "It would be better if I showed you," Grant finishes and stands up. We follow him down the small cottage's stairs and out into the winter quarters of the Army of the Potomac. We leave a busy wharf clogged with ships on our left and turn inland, passing by white tarped carriages being unloaded even at this late hour. The general leads us through rows of identical structures at the halfway point between brick and tent, and a few longer wooden buildings. The uniformity and lack of adornment speaks of structures raised for the express purpose of housing awesome numbers in hygienic conditions. I dare not think about the miles of latrines dug around the city. It certainly smells that way, in any case. We walk for a good 10 minutes in silence until we arrive at a clear demarcation in the camp. Where we come from, the tents were uniformly clean. In front of us, they are much less intact. Many of them show old stains, or were hastily repaired with mismatched swaths of cloth from other colors, giving the camp a slight air of carnival. The pickets salute us in silence, in the same clean blue uniform despite their camp's poorer equipment. They are quite noticeably black. "At ease, boys," the officer allows before turning to us. "We have a lot of colored folks, not just Negroes, enrolling everywhere right now. Training is well underway for a lot of regiments. I can get you up to 5 full regiments of the most experienced ones, mostly people who have volunteered earlier and who can already shoot. Plus 2 brigades of heavy artillery. How many of them do you need?" 6,000 men. 6,000 men, plus cannons? For me, we will take your entire stock, I declare, before being knocked on the head likely by Neminata. HSSS. What was that for? I grumble. Such a display before the general. You can't take stocks of black folks anymore, darling. That is why this conflict started, remember? You strike me over semantics? Semantics is how we get the humans, my little lime pie. Asterisk. City Point, Virginia, Army of the Potomac Headquarters, March 23, 1863. Moyes took a look at the repeater rifle in his hands. It was a nice gun, heavy and powerful yet short enough to remain easy to handle. It was practically still shining under the pale February sun. There were pouches of cartridges on the table, and his fellow United States colored troops infantrymen were grabbing those and walking to their assigned positions. The firing range before them lay empty, save for lined targets. He approached Sergeant Freeman. Sergeant Freeman was a very tall, very strong fellow with a graying beard that reached his belly button and eyes that just looked like they'd seen everything. Say, Sarge, that's a really nice gun there. Yup. And we got lots of bullets to try them out. Yup. It's for us. For real? Yup. Those shiny shooters? Yup. And those white folks won't requisition them from us when they see them. Ain't no white army folks where we're going. The private contemplated those facts in silence for exactly 2 seconds. "We're goddamn done for," he finally said. "Yup. ****. Black Harbor, Georgia, March 28, 1863. The pale light of March had not yet dispersed the stubborn morning fog when some old white man in a black suit rolled into the regiment's camp on some big carriage with the back covered in white tarp. The meadow was entirely covered in white tents and uniformed folks warming their hands over cooking fires. "Gather around, people, gather around," he bellowed. "Form ranks, on the double." Freeman bellowed. He was the oldest NCO there, and everyone listened to what he said. Some always did. He and his fellow soldiers shuffled into lines with sullen airs. The white man waited without fuss, though Moise could see his keen brown eyes assessing them. When everyone was ready, he addressed them in a booming voice. "Now, we are going to be reinforcing this position over the next week," he said. Of course, Moise thought to himself, the white man brought them here to dig stuff. He should have expected it. "And I will be counting on your efforts. Now, I know that digging can be a thankless task, so let me offer you a small incentive. In 2 weeks' time, we will be receiving very special guests." The man stood and pulled on some rope. The tarp fell away to reveal a creature of nightmare. Moise jumped in fright, as did half of the line. "Jesus Christ! My God! Devil!" The monster shrieked and clawed at unyielding steel bars. Its black talons glistened ominously as it tried to cover abyssal eyes. The flesh was pale with bony ridges. It was a demon. Had to be. No natural event could result in such a horrible humanoid abomination. This, gentlemen, is a scourge hive drone. The smallest specimen there is. Moise's blood froze in his veins. That thing was small? That thing was the smallest? 10,000 of the buggers are going to fall upon us before this is all over, and all that will stand between them and you will be the defenses you build under my careful direction. Now, I see that some of you are already getting ideas." He continued in the same, even voice as his glare fell on the shifty man on the side of the line, "So let me remind you that you are surrounded by Confederates and the drones. So unless you are very, very confident in swimming your way back to the north, I would urge you to take this seriously. If it's any comfort, me and my men will be by your side when the foe comes." "Behind us, you mean?" someone grumbled. "No," the man insisted, "by your side. The back is for the artillery." Moise sighed and went for his shovel. He hated being right, sometimes. Virginian Wilderness, March 28, 1863. "I must admit that I did not expect you to last so long," I tell the man before me. "Save your insults, demon. Remember that we may fail, but God is eternal in his justice. Yes, yes. Please spare me the theatrics. I came here to tell you that the final battle is upon us." The Gabrielite's eyes widened comically. "Not the end of the world, you lobotomized toad. The battle against the scourge hive. We are gathering south of here and you are invited to join us as part of the truce. I even brought you rations to help you go," I say. The man is clearly starving, and so are the other fighters behind him. I know that their hidden families barely fare better. There is no catch. You come and fight and you will be allowed to walk away freely afterward. Those of you who make it anyway. You expect me to believe that you would let us go? Yes, but you will understand when you see our camp. I see disbelief in his eyes, so I explain. You will see exactly how insignificant you are, you self-righteous gnats. Does it make sense now? The man's eyes lower to the trailer behind me. He swallows his saliva. How much food are we talking about? Ah, the path to the heart of the man is truly through his stomach. Though I prefer a puncture between the ribs myself. Black Harbor, Georgia, March 29, 1863. The sea at night carries a strange charm. The ebb and flow appears magnified under the light of the moon, and the smell of iodine and seaweed mix with the other attributes of the ocean to form a hull. The dark place of the hidden depths and sound of the waves eating at rocks bit by bit merge into that one singular entity, a portal to a hostile world that a careless footstep will activate. I have seen the depths, and what lurks below. If only in dream. I kneel on dark rock and slice a vein with a talon. The black blood carrying my essence falls in white foam and greenish algae like grasping limbs, off to carry my message. I settle to wait. It only takes an hour for an aura to brush against the edge of my perception. Much faster than I expected. Soon, a massive form emerges sinuously from the water. The sea woman is tall and muscular, her fishtail scarred and powerful. Yellow eyes focus on me, while a lipless mouth of serrated teeth lifts into a grin. Nirari, she greets with a raspy, sibilant voice. Good evening. I will fight this in a few nights, I say without preamble, and throw the arm of a drone. The shaman grabs it and sniffs it with two slits. She wears many strange decorations of coral and dull gold. The smell pushes her to recoil with a hiss. Yes, an old enemy. Bitter yet strong. Nirari requires help? I will fight them with an army, and I want you to join. At night, from the flank. You will coordinate with my allies. I am not sure if she can understand complex sentences. As it turns out, I am underestimating her far too much. We have little interest in the affairs of the dry lands. But, her smile turns greedy. The fist of the drowned god clan owes you a great debt. Powerful shaman. Many strong spawn. I will pay their favor to you. All of my warriors for one battle. Yes? I find your proposal agreeable. Then it is done. We know. We will watch. We will come. We will shed their blood together and feast on the flesh of the fallen. Then, the debt will be repaid. It is done. We will watch you, Nirari. We will watch for a long time. I send my first daughter to occupy my seat in your war party. The shaman slithers away, and smoothly dives under a coming wave. ****. Later that night, I ride Metas into the vampire camp. Armored carriages alternate with the many tents of household guards, mercenaries and private troops. The clash of so many auras in the same place gives me a feeling of weightlessness, as if reality here were more permeable. Masters and courtiers check their weapons or spar here and there. They all raise their eyes to me as I pass by and follow me as I make my way to the command tent. 21 lords and ladies wait in contemplative silence. The pressure of their aura would be crushing if they did not control themselves so thoroughly. They gather in a half-circle around Constantine and Jarek. Ariane. I thought you would be joining us? The progenitor asks with obvious disapproval. No, I chuckle, you are joining me. 2 hours later, Constantine's eyes rest on the absolute death trap that Black Harbor has become. A mile of flat terrain, grass and stumps. Then half that again in a dense network of moats, abatis, trenches and traps topped by an artillery park a modern army would not scoff at. And behind that, the massive warships in bombardment range. As we watch, a convoy reaches the top of the slope, loaded with crates of ammunition. Hundreds of torches shed light on a forest of bayonets. What in the name of the eye? No gawking. And follow the road because there are burrowed mines and pitfalls on the way. I show serenity despite my smugness. No one can dismiss me anymore, or think me a servant of Safar. I just demonstrated to my peers, for better and for worse, who is the most powerful military among all of us. Me. ****. Black Harbor, Georgia, Alliance Command Room, March 30, 1863. So, this is it, Jarek says in his deep rumble. We are all in agreement. You start the ritual tomorrow at noon and last until night. Then, we, Jeffrey, and the mermen attack. We will let the mortals coordinate themselves. Does anyone wish to add something? No one says a word. Then let the Battle of Black Harbor begin. Chapter 138. Moise woke up early and tired, just like everyone else. Today was the day. The regiment stood and gathered in morning prayer, then they had breakfast. It was the best breakfast he ever had with juicy bacon, boiled eggs, and bread that was not yet too stale. They even had some decent coffee. It was a shame that he had so much trouble keeping it down. Today was the day. And it started slow. All the men made ready at their own pace. He had a pouch, pockets bursting at the seams with cartridges, and a canteen. It was sunny and a little bit cloudy with a nice breeze coming from the Atlantic that brought with it a fresh smell. Flocks of gulls quarreled somewhere behind him. His regiment went to the front and center, descending in single file through ditches and passages defended with raised earth and sharpened wood branches. The going was slow. They hit several lines, with quick, easily covered access to allow entire lines of combatants to retreat deeper into the fortifications. An army could not take them. Hell, with those ships behind them, rebels would break their teeth on their fortifications by the hundreds. But they were not facing rebels. Moyes finally went through the last passage and arrived in front of the moat. It was a nice moat, filled with sharpened stakes. He had cut the ones in front of him with his own fingers until they bled with splinters. It was his spot. He went and took the one to his left. Moyes was the rightmost defender of his squad. White folks took the spot to his right. They were a grumpy bunch with antiquated pistols and brand-new rifles. Someone had thrown them out of pity. A tall man with a long, wispy white beard threw him a disparaging look and shook his head. "Well, the devil take you too, old codger." They settled to wait. That was, he thought, the worst part. Men sat where they were, their uniforms a bit dusty despite efforts to clean them. Smoke rose from the bastards who had filched tobacco somewhere along the way. Sergeant Freeman took a large pipe from one of his inner pockets and puffed on it contemplatively. Some soldiers prayed while others talked in hushed voices. Moyes decided to pray. It could not hurt. But after half an hour he had gone through every hymn he knew 3 times and still hadn't found salvation. He looked up the trench. There was not a damn thing to see, just mangled grass and stumps for half a mile. They waited. Moyes eventually surrendered to boredom and joined a game of dice. They bet cartridges since there was nothing else around. Moyes won 3, then lost 7 in a row. Above him, the lazy orb of the sun finally reached its zenith. Cooks walked down the line with water barrels and stew. They were also handed a piece of bread. Moyes could barely taste it. Behind them, something happened. He could feel it along his spine. It started as a hum, then gradually grew in intensity until he felt it like a vast noise at the edge of his hearing, a ghost of some ear-splitting shriek he could not quite ignore. There was some devilry at work here. He had heard of it from some of the folks before they were scolded. Evil worshippers. But the monsters were real, or so the newspapers said, or at least that was what Jupe, who could read, had claimed. Moyes scowled and looked forward. The demons he would face were very real. Better to think about that first. They sure were taking their time though. Early afternoon came. The sun was high and the temperature had gone to pleasant. It was so calm here, with the wind in his face and the sun warming his kepi, that he started to doze off. The tension of the past few days was getting to him. It was then that the entire line shifted. Moyes felt it in the posture of the men around him. Suddenly, all rifles were pointing forward. There were creatures galloping far in the distance. White ones. They were just tiny dots at the edge of the field right now. Moyes' stomach suddenly filled with ice and dropped into his shoes. Cold sweat erupted over his brow and his lungs suddenly cried for air. Monsters were coming, and they were taking their goddamn sweet time. "Remember your orders," Freeman bellowed. "Shoot when you have a shot. Not before, not after. Don't miss or I'll throw you sorry half-wits over the parapet." "Sarge, what's a parapet?" "That's where your ass is going if you don't aim." Time passed with agonizing slowness. The distant shapes resolved themselves into 8 creatures, 7 small ones like he had seen and another that moved with a hunch. It was so large that it kept with the others through sheer size. "Damn." Several imprecations echoed throughout the lines before the NCOs screamed at the idiots. Moyes relaxed his shoulder and placed the barrel of his repeater on top of the earthworks. He breathed slowly. They were still a bit far. Someone shot to his left. Freeman yelled and smacked him. Moyes could only hear the sound of flesh hitting flesh, babbling excuses, and a few snickers from the assholes to his right. The things were coming. He picked one at random and lined up the sights. He could see nothing but the smooth expansive steel of the barrel and the blurred form of the abomination barreling down on him. Time slowed down, until he could feel every powerful thump of his heart resonating through his body. Someone else pulled the trigger, then the entire line erupted in an acrid blue mist. Moise may have hit his target, or he may have narrowly missed it. It did not matter. It would not have mattered. The almost solid cloud of lead shredded the attacking force like buckshot through a mouse. There was a red, pinkish cloud and flying bits, then it was over. Hurrah! Someone yelled. The cry picked up across the entire camp. Hurrah! Hurrah! The defiant roar surged down the hill and spread through the surrounding meadows. It spoke of the courage of man. It was a torch in the darkness of a cave. It was fire, unity, strength of arms to reveal the nightmare for what it was, the shadow of a much smaller, much more lonesome beast. They could do this. All right, folks, settle down. Settle down, I said. Save that nice enthusiasm y'all got for the rest of 'em. Moise moved his arms a bit to work the kinks in them. He pushed an extra cartridge in the chamber to replace the one he had lost and caressed the eagle image with his finger. 3 letters with an eagle on top. They could really do this. Just had to stay calm. 20 minutes later, another group popped from the bushes and ended up much like the first. Moise did not even shoot. There was no need. Then 15 minutes later, another came. Then another. At 2, there were continuous shots all across the line. It was 3 when the first man died, a freak-friendly fire apparently. Moise saw the covered form being carried up on a stretcher on a passage to the left of him. Blood dripped from the back of the head. Moise, if you got time to gawk, you got time to clean your gun, Freeman told him in a low voice. He looked at the field in front of him. Most of the pits had been revealed by now, having successfully slowed down the horde. The drones were forced to jump above or around them, which slowed them down ever so slightly. He remembered that they had explosives around somewhere, which was why their artillery was supposedly still silent. Prayers rang in the air coming from his right again. A wave rushed from the edge of the forest. It was the biggest one yet, easily 100 individuals spread in a sort of herd. Hold fire until you get a shot, Freeman yelled. They were small and large drones, some with strange bone plates on their chests and faces. They were tougher, but they did not stop bullets. Damn it all, but Moise was getting used to it. He lined the shot at a smaller drone almost to the front of him, and almost dropped his rifle when the creature started jumping to the sides. Bloody hell! The smaller drones were running haphazardly in strange patterns. Moise focused and pulled the trigger as his target landed. It hit the chest. Someone else's bullet caught it in the leg and made the creature stumble, then a few more shots took it out entirely. The larger one fell as well with a burst head. One drone with a missing arm reached the line to his left. It jumped and landed in the ditch, twitching from a ruined chest. Freeman stepped up and drew his brand new revolver. He shot the head once and the creature's erratic moves stopped. Remember that those bastards like to play dead. What are y'all looking at? Eyes front, damn you. Moise obeyed and saw something he had never seen before. The drones were retreating. Bloody hell, that ain't good, the white man to his right said. Moise turned to him with some curiosity. Wasn't it a good thing when your enemy flees? Work looking at, nigger? Moise returned his attention to the field and wondered if he could get away with shooting the bastard and passing it as an accident. Probably not. Silence descended upon the field, and, for the first time in hours, calm returned. The cloud of spent powder lifted ever so slightly. The smell of the sea returned timidly beneath that of fire. He could almost see the sky. Then there was a sound like nails on a piece of wood. It erupted all across the yet untouched meadows. Moise's mind froze for the second time today when a thin white line appeared between the green of the trees and the brown of upturned earth. He leaned forward despite his best efforts. The line expanded and thickened. It turned into a squirming tide of pale flesh. The ground vibrated under their feet. Hold fire. Fear returned. Moise placed his rifle against the earthworks and tried to forget that the creatures could shake off grievous wounds for a few seconds. He had never felt so alone in his entire goddamn life. A heavy hand landed on his shoulder, forcing a jump. "Steady now, and watch those ears of yours because we are going loud," Freeman yelled. There were a few whoops in the line, but that was it. The things were closer now. Closer. There were so many of the damn buggers, and they had bigger ones that moved sinuously on four limbs. It was bad. Real bad. They came in range, and the world turned upside down. Moise stumbled back, hands on his whistling ears. There were little dark dots in the air, far above him, which he realized were pieces of soil. The air kept shaking with loud explosions left and right. One of them got really close and sent him stumbling again. A piece of drone arm landed next to him. The dead limb gathered into a fist slowly enough for him to see every muscle fiber contracting. The claws pierced skin and let out pinkish fluid. Moise stood back up. There was a lot of smoke. It took some time for the wind to disperse enough of the thick white stuff to see what was left. From the edge of the earthworks to the forest, the ground was craters and debris. There was nothing left of the horde but a scattering of corpses, few of them in one piece. Some people said things, but Moise did not hear them clearly. His focus was on one of the smaller drones back, far away from him. The creature had been the furthest of all mines, and it climbed to its feet slowly, painfully. Despite the distance, despite the impossibility of it, Moise and the creature's orbs met for a second. The distant buzz of the beacon at the back of his head became loud enough to drown every other sound in existence. It was an imperious order to come forward, and Moise took an involuntary step back. The call was so strong. Then the moment was broken, and he was back to being just a Massachusetts boy away from home and in far above his head. The survivors of the assault on the monster site crawled back to the trees. There was a lull. "Reload, reload and drink a bit of water if you can," Freeman bellowed. "Steady y'all, this ain't over yet." Moise blinked sweat away from his eyes. Some of the trees in the distance were moving as if a storm raged among them. Moise had built confidence over the past week. The stone promontory had turned into an impregnable fortress. Hundreds of drones had died without slaying a single one of them. This faith evaporated in an instant. The land came alive with frenzied flesh. Thick, bone-plated monsters came first in a line, 3 creatures thick that covered the entire plain. The ground shook again. Behind him, cannons roared. The guns vomited steel at a range that made missing impossible. Canister shots dug bloody furrows in an ever-moving mass that fallen disappeared under the galloping claws of those that came behind. As soon as they got near, fast-moving drones overtook the larger ones. They made use of the now ruined terrain, jumping and turning as they went. Despite the acrobatics, none of them ever got in the way of another. Moise waited, then shot the ones in front of him. Good thing is, he could not miss. There was just no free space for the bullet to escape to. His first target crashed with a pierced shoulder. Another fell as well, though he was not sure if it was his bullet or someone else's. The din of detonations deafened him, just as smoke made his eyes burn. You could not hear a thing under the incredible racket of so many barrels roaring their fury, the wrath of mankind wielded in censure of whatever thing had spawned the foe. Moise spent 1 second considering how done for he would have been without the repeater. The wave crashed into their fortifications. A first creature rammed itself into the sharpened stake and grabbed at him. Moise shot it in the head and slammed his back against the earthen wall behind him, frantically pushing more cartridges into his burning hot gun. Another creature jumped over the first one but fell with its torso mangled. The soldiers on the tier above were covering him. The creature twitched. Freeman appeared from the side and shot it with his revolver, then moved further along the line. They were not stopping. There was a spurt of blood as someone got unlucky. Another soldier was thrown over the barricade and down into the gibbering horde below. His scream was cut short. Another drone climbed on top of the first. Moise chambered his first of 4 rounds knowing that he would be too late. There was a fire projectile, and the creature's head exploded. Pieces of bone and humor ran down his uniform's trousers. He turned around and saw a woman dressed in white standing behind and above. Fire flared from her fingers and found heads, each projectile aimed with deadly accuracy. He did not stop to wonder what she was using, or why there were men with shields covering her. Using the lull, he started to shoot to the side to lessen the burden on his allies. A drone smashed through the now demolished stakes to his right and almost skewered the bearded man, but Moyes shot it down. He never hesitated. It was man versus monster now. And the pressure lessened. They were killing drones faster than the monsters could come. Folks in white and red uniforms wielded strange weapons. Boneplate cracked, flesh bubbled onto the onslaught. The larger specimens had all fallen. The tide of flesh turned to a trickle, then stopped as the creatures withdrew. He watched, mesmerized, as distant drones started to drag their dead back into the forest. What the fuck are they doing? He grumbled to no one in particular. Reusing the flesh of the dead, the bearded white man said as he, too, reloaded and checked his gun. His companions muttered prayers. Those devilish abominations use flesh to strengthen some of their numbers. And they got a lot of it all right. There was no need to have single strong creatures before, but now there is, and so they will come. It learns, that devil. It learns and it adapts. Moyes moved aside as men ran with stretchers to the back line. The nurses knew how to stop the poison that turned folks into monsters, so long as they were not dead, or so he was told. It would not help some of the poor bastards he saw being carried, that was for sure, what with all the blood. There was another short lull. Moyes reloaded and drank from his canteen to try and wash the smoke and horrid stench of drone blood from his throat, in vain. There were a few sparse shots here and there that made him wince. Supposedly, the drones could not turn a headless body. Folks were making sure. The man to his left, E1, silently gave him a repeater. What's that for? It was Jupes, but he's wounded, so it's yours now. You don't have to reload so often. All right then. They waited, and waited some more until late afternoon. The drones tried the same thing, but the assault was repelled with so many losses that the ground before him could only be seen when an artillery shell revealed it before corpses covered it again. Moyes missed his first round. It went wide, a bit too high, probably hit something anyway. As the creatures pulled back once more, he could not help but think that the cannons were slowing down, and so were the men and, amazingly, women in black or red. He thought he knew why as he gingerly touched the barrel of his gun. It was burning to the touch. The heat was starting to get to him and he emptied his canteen, then took a discreet piss against the earthworks. Then it was time again. How many of the fuckers can there be? He complained. They waited once more. More wounded were brought up. In some places, drone corpses were piled so high that they obstructed the view, but no one moved out to push them away. He did not blame them. There was a rumble. Things started to emerge from the tree line, things that did not belong on this world. They were so large that he could see them clearly, as far as they were. He had seen engravings of elephants. They did not hold a candle to the behemoths now charging towards them. The cannons roared, the strange weapons lashed, but still the creatures kept going until, somewhere behind him, a signal was given. The ship guns opened. In front of Moyes, a crimson flower of death bloomed on top of the beasts. The screaming inferno devoured ranks upon ranks of drones and left behind only charred husks. The devastation they wreaked defied description. Moyes' repeater felt like a toy. The behemoths fell one by one until more than 30 of their carcasses dotted the field, then the rest smashed through the first 2 layers of fortifications without stopping. Moyes fell to his right under a shower of splinters. Pinkish fluid pooled by his feet until his very ankles soaked. Drones were everywhere, climbing over the wall. That was when Ewan fell against him with a strange black spike through the neck. What the? Above, the woman screamed and fell back between the 2 shield bearers. She removed a spike from her arm and resumed firing down. Moyes grabbed his second rifle and shot a drone as it fell on Sergeant Freeman. They were cut off from the rest of the regiment. First 2 barricades, fall back now. Someone yelled from behind. Moyes helped Freeman up. The older man was bleeding heavily, even had one of those spikes in his flank. They stumbled to the path up. Freeman still blew the brains out of the drones coming to them. They passed under the barricade and to the next level. The white-bearded man had been waiting and shot a pursuer. The last defenders were making their way up. The battle was already raging there, and a flow of soldiers were climbing up and up under the cover of thrown blasting charges. There were bodies everywhere. "Keep going," a man in a fancy coat said as he blasted the foes with 2 engraved revolvers, each shot putting something down. Moyes kept going. Up and up they went. Freeman was getting heavier, or he was growing more tired. They passed ranks of firing infantrymen and a few cannons with barrels so hot they had started to glow. An officer was arguing with a nurse in white as he passed by. "You need to save some water for the wounded. If we don't cool those guns down, there won't be any wounded to save." At the back, there were rows of hurt men covered in bandages around 3 large white tents. The air was thick with a cloying scent of blood. He noticed lines of covered bodies to the side. A woman with white hair and red eyes grabbed him by the shoulder. "Over here, help him down on that stretcher," she ordered. Moyes did as instructed. Freeman winced as he lay. "Got to remove the black stinger. Probably poisoned," Moyes said because he felt so goddamn useless. The woman did not reply. She was busy applying a paste to Freeman's shoulder where 3 puncture wounds leaked blood. "No need. I know the score, boy," the old sergeant said pointing at his flank. "Ain't no coming back from that one." Moyes felt his eyes water even more now, probably all that powder in the air. Damn it. Were they all going to die on that mount? None of that. You don't give up, you hear? You don't have the right to give up. I forbid it. Yes, Sarge, sorry Sarge. Mom, can you make sure that I don't? The strange woman gave him something to hold, a cross of sorts. You won't turn. You have my word. Hold tight to this. Thank you. Now, boy, you go. Take this. Freeman pulled his buckle open and roared, removing the whole belt. Moyes was left with a piece. Freeman shoved his revolver in Moyes's palm. Now you go. Give them hell for me. Yes, Sarge. Farewell. Go with God, boy. Moyes about faced without a word. He realized that he had dropped his repeater somewhere along the way and picked up a piece some other idiot had discarded on the ground. He had 1 pouch of ammo left. He climbed back down the hill into a hellscape of smoke and fury, dyed red under the setting sun. Chaos had spread over the lower tiers, and that was where he stopped. Regiments had mixed. He found the white-bearded man near the portside cliff and joined the side because why the hell not? There was a man with a shield and pistol by his side, and soldiers from other companies. He picked his targets and shot again, and again, and again, without stopping. Sometimes, the man with the shield would point at strange drones with an overly large right arm and black spikes on their back. Those were the assholes that had killed his friends. He picked them off one by one. The drones retreated again. The din of battle gave way to a soft layer of moans and prayers. The sun was setting and its last scarlet rays kissed a scene of carnage the likes of which the world had never seen. Blood and corpses and mangled limbs for half a mile expanding in a cone towards a meadow on which a white blob was growing. Men and women progressively stopped doing whatever it was they were busying themselves with. Artillery servants froze with water buckets in their hands. Cartridges stopped at the edge of chambers. Canteens remained in the air, their precious contents forgotten. Silence covered the camp like a thick layer until even the wounded kept their peace. Night fell. An enormous weight crashed upon Moyes' shoulder as the background scream that had lasted for so long that he had forgotten about it sputtered and died. The white blob on the horizon walked to them, a titan of unholy flesh, an aggregate of defiled bodies. It was massive as a temple. Each of its 3-pronged limbs shook the earth as they descended to carry it forward. A myriad of black eyes covered most of its face, growing between and around bone plates like so many cancerous growths, but that was nothing compared to its sheer presence. The dominating, heavy aura pushed on Moyes until all he could do was to whimper. The thing came, and no one shot. Not one cannon spat. Not one gun discharged. The camp remained unmoving. Moyes prayed for the strength to meet death on his feet. Behind the creature, Drones of all sizes swarmed until they covered the plain. The Leviathan of flesh arrived. Moise had never felt so alone, so isolated in his whole life. It took all of his strength not to fall. "Took your sweet damn time, you big ugly lug," a voice said. It belonged to an old man in a fancy white robe working down the slope hauling what looked like a miniature moon. It was a normal, human voice like you could hear at the market gently chiding a wayward child. It wavered slightly with old age. It was not even loud at all. And yet, it carried across the camp as its owner persisted, and wherever he went, fighters stood and grabbed their weapons. The thing extended its clawed limb, but the old man would not have it. Polaris. A refreshing cold spread over Moise's skin and he shivered, cool for the first time in hours. The giant's arm froze solid and fell, spidering on the ground like a mighty tree. It was the size of a locomotive. The old man raised his fist and another, smaller moon materialized. And here I thought I would die in my bed. The creature stopped, and for the first time, looked. So far, Moise realized, they had not existed in the drone's perception except as targets and resources. But now, it saw him, and them. It saw Moise too. Moise lifted his revolver and cocked it. All around him, others were doing the same. The bearded asshole by his side chuckled. "Never thought I'd fall fighting side by side with a nigger. Go and fuck yourself." The old man chuckled harder. The ranks of mankind fell in. Cannons were realigned and a forest of steel barrels rose, defiant, against the tide. They did not get to fire. Something was coming. The skies lost their dark red hue and gained an eerie, otherworldly dye of purple. Far away to the north, a guttural man's voice said something that he did not understand. The following roar fought against the hive's presence and pushed it back. It was not a nice or reassuring sound, no, it was eager. Somewhere else, wolves howled while below them, near the port, the waters churned. With agonizing slowness, the behemoth waved its horrid head towards the source. It shifted away. "What was that?" Moise whispered. "That," the man with the shield said, "was our monsters." And he shot the closest drone in the head. ****. Earlier that afternoon. I come to and focus on the tiny connection in my mind. Sheridan is still alive. It always surprises me how little control we have over our vessels. Perhaps their very independence is the source of what makes them so valuable to us. It does not help with my serenity. I want to go out and find him, but I cannot. The sun is still there. The sarcophagus lid slides to reveal gray stalactites. We have decided to hide ourselves in a natural network of caves a few miles north of Black Harbor proper, all while leaving armored carriage in a decoy camp. Other secured resting places lie around me, some open, some not, as some masters still slumber. I gear up in silence as my senses sharpen and I can finally hear it, in the distance, muffled through thick layers of rocks. The retort of cannons. The battle is raging. Despite my best efforts, I feel the overwhelming need to go out and help him, but I cannot. The mere sight of sunlight would deaden that urge, assuming that I would be foolish enough to go through the artificial wall Martha of the Lancaster has raised. Avoiding the sun is such an integral part of me that I had forgotten how frustrating the weakness could be. With nothing better to do, I walk to the deeper cavern in search of my kin. At least, we can suffer together. I soon realize that something is wrong. The oars below are tense. Guarded. Much more so than they should be. Fearing that something may have created a rift in our fighting force before the battle could even begin, I hurry down the slippery slope. The heart of the complex soon comes into view, a circular room centered around a pool of salt water shining softly with fluorescent algae. At first, I can only see armored backs, each piece of equipment showing masterful work and the journey of its wearer. They are all turned towards the center of the room. Unity against a single threat then. I do not hide my aura out of courtesy, and approach the group at a brisk pace. The group parts to let me through without a look. I feel eyes on the back of my neck. The reason is soon clear. A half-circle of the continent's most powerful entities glare ahead at the single figure sitting, facing Constantine on an onyx chair seemingly risen from the depths. The cavern has turned into an amphitheater with a play that could kill us all. So kind of you to join us, little princess, he says. Fuck. Malakim stands by his side with his arms crossed. Our eyes meet and he smirks, tapping the pommel of one of his knives. I remember the night I spent under his orders and the statement he made. He would always hate me, and he would enjoy killing me. Nothing would ever change that. Now that your spawn has arrived, perhaps you would elaborate on your offer. Constantine tells him in a glacial tone. He, too, sits on a throne of obsidian rising from the basalt floor in a geological impossibility. Where our speaker shows no fear, Nirari shows no concern at all. He lounges like a well-fed cat. I will join your charge if you let me head it. That is all. No one whispers, no one moves. Powerful auras only let out the barest of flickers, but even such minor variations are a sure sign of the avalanche of resentment now coursing through the small crowd. Nirari settles his back against the throne and waits, a hint of sardonic smile on his lips. That is all? That is all. Will you leave afterward? The smile fades. Yes. I have matters of import to attend elsewhere. It returns. But I will be sure to return at some point. We progenitors should maintain cordial relationships, do you not agree? Why would you lead, and why would we follow? I lead because I do not tolerate pests on my planet. You can feel it as well, all of you, the shadow cast by the outsider. What you may not know is that it is a dead thing operating on directives that no longer matter. It cannot accomplish its goal. It is too far gone to succeed. And what goal would that be? To live again. As for the second part of your question, I will allow the little princess to explain. What? The weight of the collective attention crushes me like a boulder. It is all I can do to look forward and hide my discomfort. Tell them, little princess. Tell them why they should follow me. I hate Nirari, and one day I will try to kill him. For now, this ideal remains a distant prospect. What matters is the task before us tonight, and for me, accepting his offer is an obvious thing. So obvious, in fact, that I struggle to make a point. We will ride with the first. I am back almost a century ago when I was under the scrutiny of my tutor, trying to express what I remembered of the story I had just read. I know what I know, I merely struggle to convey it. I start explaining then, and the words flow more easily. We are the essence of conquest. You would ride under the banner of the deadliest warlord on earth. We would fall upon them like the chariots of Babylon on the barbarians. You will feel the sun on your skin, the wind in your hair. You will hear the arrows whistle. You will touch the very essence of the hunt, of the charge. It will be unforgettable, but it will also carry a price. Now, I have their attention. And what would that price be? Tell them, little one, tell them of my struggle. You are friends with the paper hoarders. They must have told you. He wants to take over. Over what? Everything. He fights his mother, the greatest witch who ever lived and the first immortal. When the last battle arrives, you will remember the rush and ride with him. Perhaps. That is the price. My outrageous statement is received in silence. The others show no signs of acknowledgement, of course. Disappointing, little princess. You're holding back so much. Very well then, I will tell you myself. You plot and scheme and hide in the shadows. You mask yourself with proxies, companies, and agents. I do not begrudge you your courts, nor do I fail to understand their value. I merely wish to remind you of what you truly are deep inside. Nirari's aura lashes out. Like a tidal wave, it washes over us in violation of politeness and respect. In an instant, the 40 apex predators hiss and bare fangs and weapons. Spells whistle as they charge up, but the tide ebbs as quickly as it came. This is what you truly are. Nirari stands up and opens his hands before us. Hunters. Killers. Apex predators designed by a nascent god to harvest whatever it is he seeks. We love to win more than we love to reveal ourselves, but fortunately, tonight, we can do both. So join me. Join me to ride down those intruders who would seek to take what is ours. Join me without bell and without leash, free of shackles and oaths. Join me as you are. Remember what we stand for. Then, you can go on your merry way for a few more decades. But tonight we will turn the fields red under the hooves of our nightmares, a vision of the world's past and future alike. Join me and know. I await your decision. The first of all of us sits down comfortably on his throne like an emperor in his palace. No one speaks for a while. Finally, Constantine breaks the silence. You seek to consume the foe. I have done it already, and I will do it again. With, or without you. Constantine contemplates the offer for a while. We need to discuss. Will you please grant us some privacy? My sire sneers and chuckles, but to his credit, he leaves. I think his ability to negotiate and compromise scares me almost as much as his ability to destroy. The deliberations begin immediately. Jarek, you are to lead the charge tonight. The speaker starts. I would object if he and I were evenly matched, or if his word could be doubted. We know that Nirari always keeps his oath. I want to slay the hive to the last drone tonight before the mortals turn on us. I have no objection. It would be unwise to refuse him, Safar adds from the side. He was canny to come to us at this late hour, one of the Roland twins adds. We do not have the luxury of time. I say we let him. His presence gives us cachet. I want to see if he is as good as they claim, Jarek's second adds. In the end, the decision is taken extremely quickly. The only people who grumble are those whose kin were murdered by Nirari at some point, and even they rally to the main opinion quickly. We all have too much stake in the success of this endeavor. We invite Nirari back to let him know that we agree. Everyone pretends that it was a well-considered decision. He departs through the actual walls using the spell I learned from his book. The mood turns to worry after that. It takes a lot for us to show emotion, but right now even a dense mortal could feel the tension in the air. Many of us have vassals on that hill, though they are mostly in the back line. I know that Sheridan still lives. It could change at any time. There are few conversations to be had. We have such excellent hearing that anything spoken here might as well be spoken before the assembly. With so many heavily enchanted arms and armors around, we look like metal-clad generals pulled from so many paintings ranging from the Middle Ages to the late Renaissance, lounging across the cavern like a pack of wolves between hunts. The seconds pass with agonizing slowness. The roars of cannons do not abate. Every 10 minutes or so, a new armor-clad master climbs down the stairs to take their place at our side. Our numbers swell until every nook and cranny hides a warrior eager to go. Malusin joins me at some point and sits by my side without a word. We feel it. Soon. Soon. Now. The sun dips below the horizon and the cavern sighs in relief. The world cools and expands around us. It is time. Jarek says. We rush up the stairs with such speed that we leave the place empty within the span of a breath. We jump in a rush over the seaside cliff and onto rock. All faces turn south. Smoke, thick and dark, forms a heavy black curtain from the fortress we left behind up to the skies. The first layers are empty and ravaged, burning with low embers. The guns have fallen silent. They have stopped fighting. Something is walking to them. It is large. Larger than anything here has a right to be, a moving building of apocalyptic proportions. I do not know if I could take it down if it stopped moving and let me try. And behind it, a sea, an ocean of flesh. Drones so thick and numerous as to blot the land like maggots on a corpse. A seething, squirming tide without an end. Nirari watches the show in silence. He wears an obsidian-colored plate armor that looks thick enough to stop a cannonball. On his head, he places a crowned helmet with bone protrusions, and I believe that I am looking at a dragon's smaller teeth. He raises a fist and a large nightmare emerges from behind. The signal is given. The woods around us darken until the light of the stars themselves dim as silence descends upon us. A wave like a pebble thrown in a placid pool expands towards the nearest drones. Nightmares emerge from behind, more of them than I have ever seen in the same place. Dozens of them gallop out and stop before their riders. I climb on Medicine, see John running to his stupidly big charger while Malusin is already waiting for us. Those without a mount will form a roaming group on foot. There are almost 100 riders. The nightmares snort and form a wedge, with the most powerful of us at the tip. Nirari, then Constantine and Jarek, then the strongest lords and ladies. The first vampire spares an amused glance to our right, inland, where the howls of wolves let us know that our allies are in play. Under and around the fortress, the waters boil with the arrival of the rulers of the depths. We are ready. Nirari deploys his full aura. He is soon joined by all the others, including me. At this precise moment, we are no longer competitors. At this moment, we are one. The edges of reality bleed in as creation itself turns more liquid, more malleable. Our concentrated power sends ripples into the hordes before us and, one by one, the despicable things turn their abyssal eyes on us. The heavens turn a deeper shade of purple. The Watcher's eye is wide open. Nirari's voice echoes throughout the valley, both calm and incredibly loud. No dead god will I allow to tread what is mine. No prey will I let defy me. Purple light shines on the drone's pale flesh. We are doing it. We are bringing the Watcher into the world. Its light shines on everything. And no challenge will I leave unanswered. Come, my kin, and scour the land with me. Crush them, leave none alive, and may the world run red. Nirari calls upon his soul glaive and the pressure increases yet again. Heartseeker, which he only wields when fighting seriously, rises above our heads. I call upon rose as blades and spikes as black as onyx join the call. Malakim blows into a mighty horn and the entire hive, from the smallest drone to that abomination in the distance, focuses on us. Charge. We start at a normal horse's gallop and keep accelerating. At the same time, we move away from each other to leave each fighter room to spare. We are going faster still. Martha casts a massive spell and our speed increases once more, the air practically dragging us forward. The tide has seen us. They are coming our way, all of them, including the faraway behemoth. Nirari roars in challenge and we add our fury to his. We are so close now. There are so many of them, some as large as elephants. Magna Arca. Magna Arca. Promethine. Shred. 100 spells and powers erupt around me. Melusin's signature fire bolts roar along my blood magic ones. There is no impact. We advance and the first 100 yards of drones simply ceases to exist. We do not even slow down. I see arms, faces, and a lot of eyes but it does not matter. Rose shreds through them like paper, and I have my allies by my side doing the same. John sends shattered parts flying in the air. A great hunt. I roar in pleasure as we carve a path through the ever-coming horde. We advance and slaughter them by the 100, but then, someone's nightmare screams on the side and I see it, spines flying through the air. Close rank. Shield. We contract our formation. I use Rose to knock projectiles off the earth for John and Melusin. There. Ranged prey, protect medicine kin. The return fire is immediate and devastating. Flay. Inferno. Heartseeker bolts. Spells explode all around us, targeting those strange spine-throwing drones. Packs of them turn to ash. Constantine screams and massive chains as long as ships whip through the drones, sending great numbers of them to the ground, broken. On our right, the werewolves are fully engaged in a massed formation. They advance more slowly, but they do not stop. Yes, join our revels. The purple light of the Watcher still shines across the battlefield to push our foe to a frenzy. We are surrounded on all sides. It does not matter. They cannot stop us. The charge continues. The wedge's flanks have contracted to form a circle with the younger members protecting our back. I find myself on the left side of the formation, towards the edge. My task is to fend off the spikes and slay the closest foes. I know this in my essence. It is the proper way. We move south in a slaughter without end. They come. I kill them. I knock spines off the air. More come and I kill them too. Rose's thorns and edge devastate those that dare approach. John smashes the larger specimen with methodical rage. Powerful spells from our casters clean entire columns. They do not stop coming, and we do not stop slaying. Sometimes, there is a scream of pain from one of us and our numbers diminish. Finally, There is a small lull on my flank as we approach the fortified promontory. An army of fish folks has diverted part of their number, slaughtering the drones that had attempted to climb and flank the humans. Their hisses and tridents keep the drones at bay, though they stay close to the sea. I hear a loud thump. Our three most powerful fighters jump forward from their mounts. Martha, now the senior fighter, leads us to the right as the trio faces the behemoth. It has grown once more as smaller drones climb on it and fuse with it. The cavalry group maneuvers around the titanic struggle. The behemoth opens with an aura whistle that flattens the ground before it. Nirari pushes it off with its own aura, the clash between the two turning straight lines curved and tortured. Constantine bombards it with spells that leave bleeding, fuming craters behind. It answers by opening strange rifts and growing very thick plates. The rifts swallow the spells as if they had never existed, while the thick plates resist the sharp attacks. Constantine retaliates by manifesting translucent chains that disperse the rifts like a fan blowing smoke away. The bone plates thicken more. I finally spot Jarek as he returns, having run back and forth to gain momentum. He jumps. Magna. Arca. The Cyclopean gauntlets crash into the thing's chest. Seismic waves send nearby drones sprawling on the ground while the creature's entire torso shatters, great slabs of flesh falling on the ground. They close as more of the drones fuse their flesh with the construct. I feel it, somehow, a hollow will to live backed by nothing but cold automatism, like a decapitated beast walking a few steps more. Then there is no more time and I return my attention to the fight ahead. Our charge sweeps everything in front of us until the detonation of cannons stop. We are at the edge of the fortifications. The ground is covered in drone bodies so thick that I cannot spot the earth beneath. A veritable mound of bodies blocks access to the humans beyond, though a few drones still climb them. They are shot down as soon as they reach the top. On foot now, form a line and cover the humans. We obey and our nightmares form a herd behind us, before riding south and leaving us to our task. They crash through the few drones there and disappear in a thicket. The nearby forests grow darker and stay darker. The fabric is thin here, thinner than usual. I call upon a bolt, and it forms effortlessly. Cut them down. We follow Martha's voice and stand our ground. The drones are endless and we kill them endlessly, stepping on the corpses of their brethren as the mountain of the dead grows ever higher. I lose myself in the rhythm. Slash, cast, deflect. Cover Melusan when she casts a more complex spell, and John when he advances to crush a larger beast. They, in turn, help and cover their neighbors. It is a dance as old as time, one where a single mistake can cost dearly. Sometimes, someone fails but the rest picks up the slack. I will not fall here. Once more. Cut. Once more. Cast. Every new enemy slain by Rose adds to my essence until I feel it bubbling with. Oh no. Thorny roots explode out from under piles of corpses to grab and lacerate drones. I feel my essence deplete like a pierced balloon. And then a pair of claws grabs my neck and the essence simmers down. You are not quite there yet, child, Martha says with a little condescension. Then she bellows another order. Hold the line. Mages, with me. You to Ariane. The command falls to Adam, one of the Roland twins who contracts the line again as a dozen masters and a lord detach from the group. We rush over the fortifications, ending nose to nose with a thick line of surprised defenders. By the Watcher, they're grimy. We are friendlies, Martha assures. The men and women's eyes land on our blood-soaked gear and intimidating weapons. We really are. Let us through. She pushes with a bit of charm and their tired psyches accept her gentle touch. They part and we climb through ditches, trenches, and passages. It looks like more of the defenders made it through than I had feared. I even spot a few Gabrielites mingling with soldiers from other groups. Our path leads us up, where many wounded are attended by tireless white Cabal healers under the direction of Sola, the albino mage. We find most of the archmages in a half-circle around a lone tree. I notice that they are all wounded. Carmela, the blonde fencer who is no longer scared of werewolves, even holds the stump of her right hand. I move away from my group to see what this is about. Frost sits against the trunk with a slightly annoyed expression. His eyes are closed and his hands grasp a bottle of expensive brandy. He is also quite dead. I address William, the shadowy heir apparent to Hopkins. "Does it count?" I ask. "Who knows with the old bastard?" He replies with a chuckle. Martha calls me and I leave. We follow a small path along the cliff on the side of the abandoned village. I look down to see a dense formation of fish folk fighting with oversized tridents, spearing drones before they can reach them. As I watch, a large wave covers the front ranks of the creatures and drags them towards the sea where unaffected mermen butcher them. The second group of vampires and the werewolves are still cutting their path towards us in the distance. Their progress is slow to a crawl. "Come on, Ariane, do not dally. We must reactivate the beacon." I follow Martha and the other mages to a cliffside grotto, this one man-made. We find Constantine's device inside. The mages in charge of its activation lie around with congealed blood marring their eyes and ears. One of them is dead. "You can rest, we shall take over," Martha says. One of the mortals nods and helps the weakest member of their team up. I know what to do, Martha and I link hands, as do the others. We take our spots around the construct to chant. The beacon clunks back to life. Our essence pushes in and we open our mouths. A low drone rings at the edge of my hearing. We stay like this for hours, sharing the burden between each other. The beacon pulses against the Scourge Hive's nefarious influence, disrupting it, preventing it from adapting efficiently. We hold against it until the waves of power lose strength, until it turns from a torrent to a trickle. Finally, as dawn approaches, they fall silent. We deactivate the construct and return to the surface. The land around us is devoid of combat. Only the moans of the wounded remain. The war is over. We have won. Tope continued.